Well, I actually do anticipate a short-term surge because availability is really, really challenging on silver right now. I think there's a 3-week delayed delivery. You will get it, but you're just going to have to wait for it, unless you want these big, huge, unwieldy bars, which are kind of challenging to barter with. So you kind of want the smaller pieces. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get it, and it doesn't mean that the premiums are not going up, because it's the real physical market. And, we've been trained to look at that spot market and go, oh, well, that's how much that should be worth. And that's not really true. So I think it's a gift. I think it's a huge gift in both gold and silver. If you're working with somebody that can actually lock it in for you, get it. Regardless of the price, the current nominal price in there, number one, the suppression, and then you'll go to try and buy a piece of, well, even bullion gold, which I don't personally buy bullion gold because of confiscation reasons. However, I can't guarantee whether they'll do that or they won't do that. I like to be, Jake, I always ask myself this question: what if I'm right? What if I'm wrong? And if I can do something that really doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong, that's the choice I make, because then I don't have to worry about it. But, you're going to be paying premiums because the physical gold and silver market is the real market underneath it. And there is a finite amount of it. And once that's going off the market, like all the people buying silver, but look at all the central bankers buying gold, right? So when these metals come off the market, they're not coming on so fast. I'm not putting my metals back on the market, right? So it's that scarcity factor. The true flight to safety asset is always gold and silver, because it has the most functionality of any asset or any instrument out there, since it is used across the entire spectrum of the global economy. So it's used in medicine, it's used in food, it's used in jewelry, it's used in the financial system, it's used in manufacturing. This is true for both gold and silver. And they have never been able to duplicate the properties of gold and silver. So you can't do without them, which means that there is 100% of the time, there is always a base of buyer. And it's the broadest base of buyer. So I think that we could well be coming to a time, and that's the whole point of the silver and the SLV changing their prospectus and admitting that they're not going to be able to get their hands on silver, and yet silver is $27 an ounce. I mean, seriously, it's a joke, but I believe JP Morgan, who is the custodian of SLV, I believe their stock made a new high today, all-time high today. Woohoo! But that's why I said the silver, what's going on in the silver market could absolutely break the bullion banks back and cause this whole house of cards to come tumbling down. You want to be in it as much as you can beforehand. And I'll also give you guys a little tip, because you can see I don't have coins in here, right? I mean, I got all these things at, mostly yard sales and what have you. But people don't realize what's happening, really. And so if there is like an antique mall or something like that near you, and you call them up and say, hey, who do you have that's there today, or deals in silver or jewelry or things like that, and then you go and talk to them and offer them more than they would get for melt, and you'll take all their broken pieces, rock and roll hoochie coo, right? It's a great way to buy it. And I've done it. Now, obviously I'm with ITM Trading. And so the lion's share of what I have is through them, because coins are more recognizable. However, if you can't get your hands on them, or even if you can, there's nothing wrong with having a whole bunch of junk silver like this. Well, you're going to see a force majeure, and you're going to see the prices, well, it'll be really interesting to see what happens, because I think, we already have a bifurcated market, right? Where you've got demand through the roof, availability quite limited, and yet you have the price declining. So we could still see those contracts pushing down the visible price that we see, at the same time that you have to pay if you can get it, a huge premium on there, and a disorderly market, a very disorderly market. But I do think that will also then spill over, because then that'll make this whole, you're spot on, Jake. This is really a currency crisis. It's not a gold and silver crisis, not a stock market. It is a fiat money crisis, because the system died in 2008. It was just papered over, but that didn't change the fact 100% that it died. And the powers that be have been working religiously on creating the next new system to transition us into it. And the Biz even did a report, central bank digital currencies, evolution, not revolution. It's revolution, because it takes even more control over the individual that it had previously. So when you're really looking at it, and I also say that because according to the central banks, the Biz and all of that, I believe it's called discretionary anonymity. So in other words, once you're in those digital currencies, they can choose who they're looking at or who they're not going to look at. And I don't think that who they're not going to look at is not you and me. They'll be watching us like a hawk, easy algorithms to go in there. And so very disorderly, a tremendous amount of depopulation. I'm so sorry about that. I really am, because it's so not necessary. We're already seeing a lot of depopulation, and from hunger, more even than from COVID, from hunger. So I think that will get a lot worse. And just, people's, if you think your life is different than it was a bit more than a year ago, it will be drastically different from that. And look at what we've been through over this past year with all of these lockdowns, which means the population has to walk in lockstep, getting us used to just doing it, just doing it. But it's kind of like the same thing they did with TSA. They created the crisis, they put it in the day before Thanksgiving when people were traveling, so that people just complied.